right, everybody. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Blazer Victory Podcast. John Duncan here, and of course, I'm joined as always with my co-host Darian Smith and Jimmy Marion. And guys, unfortunately, UAB did drop one in Dallas to SMU 72-69. But before we get started on recapping that game, if you are not subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit us up YouTube at Blazer Pod. If you're watching this right now, hit the like. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss any future episodes of the Blazer Victory Podcast. But this game recap episode and all game recap episodes are brought to you by Cahaba Brewing Company. Guys, go down to the tap room, check them out. Go to a local supermarket and grab a six-pack, whether it's the Okauba IPA, Pale Ale, Blonde, a lot of great core offerings from Cahaba Brewing Company, and they just dropped a new edition of the Blonde, which is their staple beer. It's the Blood Orange Blonde, so definitely go down to the tap room, taste it. I can't wait to get down there and try it out. I haven't been able to yet, but hopefully this weekend I'll be able to drop by. But again, shout out to Cahaba Brewing Company for sponsoring the Blazer Victory Podcast. And guys, we've got to talk about this game, at least for a little bit. UAB drops a tough one, 72-69 at SMU, a game they led by as many as 12 points with, I believe, 10 minutes, remaining in the second half, and just really SMU kind of took control of that ball game late. But Jimmy, I'll throw it to you first. What were just your initial reaction from this ball game?
Well, my first thought was I'm really proud of how the team played largely in that second half, really the first 10 to 12 minutes of the second half. You referenced that 12-point lead. Admittedly, I felt fairly comfortable when UAB was up 10 with about 10 minutes to go. Going into the game, it was not my expectation that UAB would win this contest. However, I thought that there was certainly a chance, and obviously I was rooting for that to happen. And, listen, UAB led this game for over half of the contest against a solid team in SMU in a road environment where they had an announced attendance of over 5,600 people. So, this was a tough game, a tough, competition, tough crowd, and they played largely well. And it was certainly a bummer that UAB was not able to win this contest, as you can probably sense in some of our emotion as we start this episode today. But for me, big picture wise, I did walk away from this contest feeling even more confident that UAB can compete with really any team in the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah, for sure. And Darian, I want to hear your just initial reaction, but I do think, Jimmy, that is a great, place to start, that you have to be proud of this team. Of course, loss isn't good in any level, but to go into a hostile environment to a really good SMU team and lead for the majority of the second half, like you just mentioned, just kind of let it slip at the end. But that's tough to do on the road in conference, especially against a good ball club like SMU.
Yeah, SMU. I liked the game yesterday. Just overall, as a hoops fan, it was just good basketball. Like the way they started out, both teams, good defense, crisp rotations, communication was at a high level. It was just high level basketball. Nothing was easy. And I always appreciate the mental aspect of the game. It's one thing to have skills, and I always think of Memphis, right? And I'm not taking a shot at Memphis or anything. I'm just talking about in comparison's sake that Memphis has a lot of rangy 6'8", 6'7" physical athletes. They have shooters. They have Javon Quinterly. You know what he did at Alabama. They have all of the athletes in the high caliber ranking. But what SMU displayed yesterday was a next level in just discipline, just good coached up sound basketball, especially defensively. SMU did not have they didn't have an Eric Gaines. They didn't have a Butter on their team, somebody that can just create, right? Or a pure all-out athlete. They didn't have, when you think of FAU to me is like clearly the toughest team now, because you think of Janelle LeBron Davis, right? Elijah Martin, like all of Victor Golden. They have all of these guys they have about 6 guys that can get you buckets, right? They can create on their own, and they move around, they fly around. It's just really hard. I think they're the best team in conference, hands down right now. That's even including Charlotte, you know. But even if you think about Charlotte, Charlotte has those thick guards that can post you up and they can score. Everybody has some form of creation. I really don't think SMU have. I still don't. But what SMU has is like elite discipline, right? It's like playing North Texas all over again at just a little faster pace. They have elite just communication. I just like that aspect of it. How can you get this group of players? Have you ever seen in the NBA just role players, right? You got guys. I don't know if you got. I watch the NBA a lot, so I know a glut of role players. So like one guy is not, like Alex Caruso. He plays on the Bulls. He's a defensive dynamo. He's not a creator. He just impacts winning, right? It's like a team full of Tony Tonys. Imagine a team full of Tony Tonys and Trey Jimisons, you know. And with Trey, shout out to Trey, just started for the Memphis Grizzlies the other day in the NBA game. But you see what being a role player, you see what that gets you. It gets you in the NBA because you can play a role, and that's what SMU is. A whole bunch of role players, but they find a way to get it done, man. They're scrappy. I really like that team, and I think we took it to the next level. I think. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, well, you went all green on us.
Oh, you went green. I went green.
Bleeding green.
Hey, he bleeds green, man. Yeah, I don't know what happened to your video, but it's like all green now.
Green screen.
Yeah, but that's just the Blazer pride in me. We're gonna take it for that. But all that to say is, you guys can still hear me good, so whatever. All that to say is that I really appreciate the brand of basketball that SMU brings, because they don't have that creator, not one. And they just scrap for everything. And I think this can be a learning lesson for our team. We have creators, we have all of that, but we still lack that next edge discipline that we need to be the team that we want to be. And so if we take this loss and turn it into a lesson, I think it'll be the best lesson for us overall. If we play with that same edge SMU had, we had it for a portion of the game, but not 4 quarters. If we play with that same energy, man, I think we can really make some noise going forward.
Hey, while we're on the topic of the SMU defense, I just wanted to talk a little bit about their strategy early in the game. I thought it was interesting that we've seen opponents double to send an extra defender at Javian Davis for the majority of the season, but I thought it was interesting that SMU was doubling the post, sending an extra defender at a Christian Coleman, at a Yax, and I thought that early on, I'd have to go back and look to see the exact number, but I thought of those 10 first half turnovers that quite a few of them were either A, when UAB was trying to, enter the ball into the post, or, when UAB was trying to get the ball out of the double team down low. And so I thought there were certainly, some struggles, and there was a point of emphasis there. So, and speaking of turnovers, UAB, despite turning the ball over 10 times and in the second half largely protecting the basketball, I thought it was interesting that all 5 second half turnovers by UAB occurred after the under 8 media timeout in the second half. And so when it got to 10 to 12 points, unfortunately, one of the reasons why that lead did not stick for UAB was turning the ball over. So when you look at UAB as a team statistically over the season, this game in particular, UAB unfortunately had more turnovers than what they average, and they turned SMU over less than what they typically force opponents to do. And so when you have that differential of -8 in that particular category, that certainly is going to play a major factor. And then last thing, just as it relates to the SMU defense, when you look at the stats and see at one point during the broadcast they had shown, I think it was around the under 8 minute timeout in the first half, that SMU was already credited with 5 blocks and 5 steals, so 10, I call it stocks total in the first half, and they ended with 20 combined blocks and steals in the ball game, which is certainly a season high that UAB has faced. And so SMU defense was good on paper. They really came after us early. UAB settled down, but it was ultimately that last 8 or so minute stretch in which UAB had too many turnovers, and that certainly contributed to why UAB was unable to hold on in this one.
Definitely. And I do just want to say, I know UAB ended the game. What was it? 12 turnovers? No, 15 turnovers. Sorry. 10 of them was in the first half. And I feel like, during the game at halftime, I texted y'all in the text thread, and yes, SMU is a really good defensive team, but I just felt like UAB was making too many extra passes, and kind of passing up some pretty good shots, and then AK's really adamant about taking quality shots. The staff keeps track of those during the game, and there were a couple of looks, especially in the first half, that I felt like UAB passed up that they didn't need to pass up. Um, this one play late in the game wasn't the reason why UAB lost, but that missed dunk by Yax was a huge moment in the game, at least late. Kind of got the crowd back into it. But I mean, that's not why UAB lost. You can go to those 15 turnovers. You could see another late costly turnover when Coleman kind of lost his grip of the ball. You can point to a lot of different things, but I do think, I hate it for Yax. I do think that was a big missed opportunity for UAB late in the game to kind of extend that lead to a multiple possession lead. But I hate it for him. And again, reiterate, I'm not blaming Yax. Hey, people miss dunks all the time. We've sure seen this team miss, some dunks or layups, and we've seen a lot of other teams do it. Everybody does it. It just, on the road, you have to make those plays to be able to win on the road, especially in the American Athletic Conference.
I think against a team like SMU with active, they were super active defensively. Like, they hustle all over the floor. They get their points by hustling, and then it's hard for them to score in the half court, but it doesn't mean that they won't. They're just inconsistent at it. So the best bet is to not turn the ball over and just be decisive, but you have to hustle back against this team. They take advantage of your mistakes. They're counter punchers. If you limit your mistakes against this team and you have good shot creators, I think you're in a good spot against them. I think it's a lesson to learn, especially at the 4 spot with Yax and Christian Coleman. I think SMU did a good job of making them guys second guess. A lot of times I was tweeting about being decisive. We need to be more decisive. The thing I liked about Butter in this game was Butter was going to take the shot. If it was there, it was let me pump fake and let me try to drive. I mean, we saw AJ Vasquez do that a couple times, try to drive, try to get deeper in the lane, and he ended up getting himself in sticky situations. We saw Christian Coleman when he was just taking the shot, he was good. But as soon as they start flashing a player here, throwing hands here, there, and then you see that extra pass, and a lot of times they got hands on the ball, or they forced a ugly shot, or they were just good at just being really, really active, and then they were off. They were off to the races trying to get some early offense, right? And then they were very forceful. They just used whatever other skills they had to win the game, and they did that all game. I tweeted that SMU didn't change nothing. Like, once they went up early and then we came back and we went up 12, they didn't change how they played. They kept playing with that same intensity level, and it was us that couldn't maintain that level. They made us indecisive again, and I felt like Butter, and to a certain degree, Eric. I think Eric was very decisive with what he wanted to do, and I appreciated that. But I really think at that 4 spot, I saw Javian Davis take some really good post-ups, and he was decisive on getting to the rim and putting up the shot. At the 4 spot, we depend on Yax to kind of make plays. He's good with passing. But in that game, I think the next evolution for him and for Christian Coleman is to say, okay, this is the flow of the game. This is how I need to play. I don't need to think about passing here and there. I need to go up strong with the ball. right? I need to go ahead and score. If I'm going to do that, if I'm going to pass, I need to pass. I don't need to second guess this and that because they're feasting off of that. And I think this can be a good lesson. I appreciate that game. It's kind of weird to come away walking away from a game like that, but that was just high level basketball. In all of the basketball sense, I'm not even mad because I think we will learn from it. I think that was a lesson that we needed, and fortunately, it was on the road. If we take that lesson, we go back to Bartow with it. I like our chances against FAU. FAU is going to be a tough task, but if we play with the intensity that SMU just showed us that we can obtain and that we can maintain, and if we do that for 4 quarters and we have the players that we have, I like us against anybody.
Yeah, well said, Darren. And I mean, this team is so close. I mean, we just talked about it for 15 minutes. I mean, there were plenty of opportunities for UAB to kind of run away with this game. I mean, they had a 12-point lead in the second half. You go back a couple weeks ago at Charlotte, a 20-point lead in the second half. If UAB can just find a way to finish these games on the road, I mean, they're going to be prime ready come March for the AAC tournament in Fort Worth, Texas. One thing I wanted to point out too, it was huge for, when Eric Gaines picked up that 4th foul, late in the second half and had to sit on the bench for a few minutes. I believe that's when you saw the Coleman turnover. You saw a couple just kind of offensively look kind of awkward without, Eric on the floor. Kind of allowed SMU to creep back in and eventually take the lead late in the ball game. But Jimmy, were you going to say anything else in regards to SMU before we preview FAU really quick?
Yeah, there was just a couple of other categories in which I thought contributed to the loss for UAB in this one. And we know how important, as an example, free throws are for this UAB basketball team. And 9 free throw makes tied a season low for UAB in this contest. UAB averages almost 18 made free throws per game, and the 11 free throw attempts for UAB was a season low. And so the inability, if you will, to get to the free throw line in this contest certainly played a factor. UAB is actually 13-3 this season when they make more free throws than their opponent, and that's compared to 1-5 when UAB does not. And another specialty category that we know is very critical for UAB success is points in the paint. And in this particular game, UAB was minus 12 in that category, 28-40 overall for SMU. And again, when you look at the trends for UAB this season, UAB is 9-2 when they win that particular category, and they're 5-6 when they do not. And I thought finally transition points, fast break points, if you will, was problematic for UAB in this contest, allowing SMU 14 to only having 10 for UAB. The 14 fast break points for SMU was 4 more than UAB allows or I should say per game this season in a 3-point game. Every point matters. And I thought particularly UAB has shown some areas of opportunity in recent games, specifically with transition defense. So I think that's been an area of concern, whether it's making a 3 and then not getting back, or just if it's the bigs that aren't necessarily hustling back. And when you play a few teams like we did, whether it be a Charlotte or North Texas, that's not going to burn you as much. But then when you turn it around and you're facing competition like in Memphis or like in SMU that's going to get up and down like in a track meet, we've got to adjust for those particular situations. But yeah, I just thought those were a few stats that certainly contributed. As we turn the page, those are going to continue to be categories that UAB is going to have to excel and win for UAB to come out with the win.
Definitely. And let's just go ahead and kind of jump into the game. This Thursday night, guys, I know UAB's coming off of a loss, but we still need as many people that can make it to Bartow Arena this Thursday night as possible. The game is tipping off at 8 o'clock for those that are planning on getting to Bartow. But if you can't, the game will be televised nationally on ESPN2. So yet another primetime national televised opportunity for UAB in this program. And Jimmy, you said it before, AK in the coaches show post game, he's clamoring for at least 6,000, 6,500 attendance in Bartow. The guys still deserve it. I mean, just lost a hell of a game to SMU, but they're still playing really good, fun basketball. So if you can, come on down to Bartow Arena this Thursday night and bring a friend or two. Can't wait for that. And hey, we can't wait to get some revenge on FAU. I mean, this is a team that typically it's really become a rivalry between these two programs. Outside of the last matchup, I really feel like every game that UAB and FAU play is a close game. We can kind of talk about the last game in Boca a few weeks ago. UAB fell 86-73. I know we hit on it a little bit in a prior episode, but you just can't let John L. Davis get going, and you have to control Golden, the 7-foot Russian center, down low. If those two guys are, if John L. Davis is getting whatever he wants, UAB is going to be in trouble. Jimmy, do you think? Can you remind listeners kind of what happened, what John L. Davis did well on this last game at FAU that UAB lost a couple weeks ago? Oh,
I'm mute there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like forever ago that UAB played on the road at FAU. It seems like we typically will start out conference season playing at FAU, and John L. Davis has kind of become somewhat of a kind of like a legend on the Blazer Victory podcast, because for those of you that recall the game, I guess it would have been in 2023, January, that was almost John L. Davis's coming out party. What I recall about FAU and UAB from this season in Boca is really Yax and John L. kind of, going back and forth with one another. And I loved it, first and foremost. I think that Yax is the kind of player that really benefits from that type of setting. And so I remember that. But unfortunately, what didn't John L. Davis do against UAB in this prior matchup? So, John L. Davis went 5 of 6 from 3, 10 of 16 from the field, 30 points. He had 7 rebounds. I mean, the only thing that you could look at his output and say that there was an area of opportunity would be turnovers. He led FAU with 4 turnovers in that particular matchup. But, I mean, he really did everything. He wasn't as active defensively, at least when you look at steals and blocks. But, again, we know that John L. Davis is a box score stuffer and that he can do it all. And so I think it was actually early in the FAU game that there were switches specifically where our JV and Davis was getting switched onto John L. Davis, and that's a recipe for disaster. And so I think that was actually, again, I'm going off memory here, was John L. Davis's first make of the game was a 3 when he got the switch. And then when you also are able to stretch the defense like that, he's able to take the bigs off the dribble. And so how does UAB stop that? That's going to be a tough task. I can't answer that question, but we've got to try to ensure that defensively we're not giving John L. Davis those, nice matchup opportunities where he's getting matched up specifically against JV and Davis. I think Yax obviously can move his feet some, and you get a guy like Coleman that can stay hopefully in front of him. But if we're getting into switches and John L. Davis is being guarded by JD Davis, it's just not, a good matchup for UAB.
Yeah, Jimmy, do you know how many assists that John L. Davis had that game?
Looking here, John L. Davis was only credited with 2 assists in that particular game.
So if I'm looking at that, I'm thinking that maybe his weakness is playmaking. So if I do come up on that, they try to set their screen with Victor Golden, I'm trapping. I'm not letting him go one-on-one. I think that probably was our problem. I'm gonna trap hard. He had 4 turnovers, so I'm gonna try to make him be a playmaker versus let him score. That's what I would do anyway. That's what I would try to do, and I would try to force him to be the point guard of the team because he obviously can score. I think the other thing is besides John L. Davis, besides besides JD, is it was a couple times he got switched up on other players, and he still. I mean, you think Yax and you think Christian Coleman are big enough, or they just got to be up to the task. Our guards, whoever's guarding them, they just got to be up to the task because he. I don't know, man. I remember last year before he played UAB, he had modest stats. Like he was not this guy that he is now. Ever since he's played UAB, he's constantly become that guy. Like every game afterwards, I swear it feels like it. I check the box score here and there from certain games, and John L. Davis is always doing this thing. I'm like, dang, he really did come out against us. Like Jimmy was spot on with that. I think he's an NBA player now, right? I think he's he's a pro. So I would force him. Hey, John L. Davis, you're gonna have to have 15 assists this game. You're not dropping 30. You're not dropping 30. That's just he can score, he can rebound. Can he play make? I don't know. He had 4 turnovers. Let's see if we can make him have 7 turnovers to 2 assists with 15 points. And let's give ourselves a better chance. That's what I would try to do.
Yeah, spot on, both of you. I mean, and from what I'm gathering too, we just need to disrupt FAU's rhythm offensively. Like if they get going, especially with those guards, or if they're just dumbing it down to Golden and he, has nobody on him, then UAB is going to be in trouble this Thursday. But hopefully it'll be a good matchup again in Bartow Arena. Hopefully it'll be the same result as last year when FAU came down to Birmingham, as UAB knocked off a ranked FAU last year. So hopefully good things will happen. But hey, get down to Bartow this Thursday night, 8 o'clock. If you can't, it'll be televised on ESPN2, but we certainly hope that you can make it down there for a hopefully fun atmosphere in Bartow Arena again. And hey, come on down to Iron City Wednesday night. They're having Trent Dilfer and UAB football is having their 205 event on National Signing Day. It's at 6:15, I believe. Yeah, 6:15. Looking at the press, but you can head in a little earlier and meet and greet with the coaches at 5:30. Hopefully, all 3 of us can make it out. We will certainly try. And definitely Thursday night in Bartow. But Jimmy, Darian, any final thoughts? Oh, hey. Listeners, keep an eye out on the Patreon. I know it's been a while since we've done something on the Patreon, but National Signing Day is Wednesday. The Blazer Victory Podcast is going to do something on the Patreon. So patreon.com/BlazerPod, $5 a month gets you exclusive episodes and content every month, or you can join annually and save a 10% discount.
Hey, John, side note, I think they already saw the news. We got a
What's
kicker.
That?
We got a kicker.
Hey, the Blazer Victory text thread was lit yesterday when we found out we got the kicker from Pell City. And
guess what? Guess what? In this huddle, he was kicking it through the end zone.
Oh my gosh! Can you believe it?
Through the end zone on kickoffs. Like,
Can somebody remind me where the team is automatically starting if the ball gets kicked into the end zone? I forgot what that rule is because we didn't see it a lot. Like what a touchback means.
Hey, it ain't getting the 35-yard line like last year. 25-yard line.
Well,
yeah.
Okay. We were starting like I feel like our average starting point was like at the 50, like for the other team. It was like they were already in our territory. That's why I couldn't halfway blame the defense. But come over to the Patreon, we can have a good discussion about that. So I think it's worth the sign up. So we're gonna discuss with it. Looked like from the coach's tweets, it looked like we got 2 or 3 more players to add on to this roster. And I'm pretty sure they're waiting to signing day to announce it. I know we've been monitoring some of those guys. It look like some good guys. So, check it out. Hey. We already got a good class. Check out what we got to say on the Patreon.
If we get to 150 patrons, then we'll have a charity event. We're going to go out to the field and we're going to see which one of us can kick the ball the furthest. Darian, John, and myself.
Believe it or not, I was the backup kicker in middle school.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, starting center, backup kicker.
What's the longest field goal you kicked?
Oh, I never kicked one in a game. I was just a backup.
In practice.
25. I mean, it wasn't nothing.
Ooh, extra point guru. Okay.
There you go. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, exciting things to come on the Patreon. Shout out to Cahaba Brewing Company again. Go down to the tap room. Check out the new blonde, blood orange blonde Let us know what you think. I'm excited to hopefully get down there this weekend. But Jimmy, go ahead and send us out until next time.
Blazer Nation, just play. See y'all on Thursday.
And Wednesday.
And Wednesday.